In 1806, Noah Webster published America's first dictionary, a compendious dictionary of the English language. It includes 37,000 entries, a meager sum by today's standards, with simple definitions, 1 or 2 lines per word, usually listing a part of speech and a couple of synonyms. One of those entries is pragmatical. It's at the very bottom of the first column of page 232. Webster defined it as meddling, very busy, impertinent. A reader at the time might not have guessed that 200 years later, this word, minus the AL ending, would be looked up more than any other. You see, 5 years ago, Merriam-Webster, the company descended from Noah, started tracking the words people look up in its free online dictionary. Pragmatic is number 1 since then, with almost 30% more hits than insidious at number 2. What those and other frequently looked up words have in common is that their meanings can be tricky, multifold, complicated, nuanced. They've also changed over time. Language evolves as people adapt the use of words to suit their needs. In the case of pragmatic, the evolution began with Webster's next dictionary, his 1828 masterwork. The meaning of pragmatical stayed the same, but the word was joined as an adjective by pragmatic. Unfortunately, Webster didn't explain why or how the AL-less spelling had emerged. In 1864, Webster's successors, George and Charles Merriam, published a mammoth revision of the 1828 book. In the intervening decades, Webster's definition of pragmatical had fallen out of vogue. Busy was now listed as obsolete. Meddling and impertinent were still there, but a new sense had appeared, pertaining to business, hence material. The word was inching closer to what we think of as its modern meaning. It's easy to see the jump from pertaining to business or businesslike to practical, which the word did make in 1890 as a synonym for pragmatical. It's right there at the top, immediately followed by busy, which for some reason is no longer listed as obsolete, and philosophical, dealing with causes, reasons, and effects rather than with details and circumstances. The big change in our word shows up in Merriam's 1909 unabridged. Pragmatic supplants pragmatical as the primary spelling, and the word expands to 6 senses and remains that way in the 1934 and 1961 editions. But it was impossible for a reader to know for sure what the editors believed was the most common sense of pragmatic at that moment. Was it of or relating to the affairs of a community or state? Was active, busy, officious meddling back in fashion? Did a new philosophical sense of the word dominate? Kantianism? Pragmatism? Or did pragmatic really most often mean practical? The lack of clarity is because Merriam, at least starting in the 20th century, listed different senses of a word in the order in which they first appeared in print. That was the standard in lexicography. The Oxford English Dictionary still does it that way today. But now Merriam has begun what will be a decades-long online overhaul of the 1961 unabridged. The most frequently looked up words were among the first to be revised, including pragmatic. Merriam definer Emily Brewster kept it at 6 senses, rewriting, clarifying, and fleshing out each one. It took her weeks. But now those senses are listed in order of use, based on both citations in print and Brewster's own sense as a native English speaker. 4 of the meanings are in use today. The definitions include quotations from newspapers, magazines, and books to illustrate examples of their use. The other 2, Noah Webster's among them, are labeled archaic. The most common sense of the word is first, concerned with or relating to matters of fact or practical affairs, practical rather than idealistic or theoretical. A confusing word for many people now has a primary definition that's clear and detailed, at least that is, to someone reading it in 2015.